Tonight, what we're going to do is just have a look at the realms of existence as they're talked about basically in the Theravada tradition. But I should say at the beginning that in the Mahayana tradition it's very, very similar. There are just a few small kind of differences. Again, this is where we are, the world of human beings. It's interesting if you look at it, we're really near the bottom. There's a lot of worlds above, all the way to the top. And the downfalls down here are just a small section. The human beings are just a small section. The world of the various gods is enormous. It goes really many, many different layers. They're also very highly populated and go to the top level of existence. One thing I'd like to point out at the beginning is, because this I think really important, the Dugati, or the bad destinations, are just these four at the bottom. And the Sugati, or the good destinations, far outnumber the bad destinations. The bad destinations are only a small section of samsara. The good destinations, that means from the world of human beings on up, the God levels, that means the Deva levels, the Brahma levels, and so on, the Pure Lands and so on. There's many more of them. What it corresponds to, if you remember, I've spoken about this before, in the Abhidhamma analysis of the mind, the amount of bad thoughts, of akusala thoughts, is only so much. And the enumeration of the good thoughts that people can have, they're called sobhana chittas. The sobhana chittas are very much more. And so it's a bit similar to this, you see. Now, one thing I want to say at the beginning is, this is like a schematic representation of the realms that people can be born in. But they're not only just like physical realms or spiritual realms, they correspond to psychological realms. In Buddhism, one of the most important insights, I think, is that the cosmological world reflects the psychological world, and the psychological world is reflected in the cosmological world. That means the realms that you find kind of physically or spiritually, those realms you also find in anybody's psyche as well. And they correspond very closely. Like if we go above the sensual worlds, mainly people live in the sensual worlds, yeah? That means they're getting sense contact, and according to that contact, they're acting and reacting. And they're feeling happy or they're feeling unhappy. But if you go beyond those realms, into the realms of the meditative attainments, these realms, the Brahma realms, correspond, they're jhana labha. That means people who have attained to jhana get reborn in these realms. But also, if you get the jhanas in this life, this is the corresponding realm that you find yourself in. It goes first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. So the psychological attainments that you can get through meditation, or not get through meditation, like down here in the sense worlds, are mirrored in the cosmological worlds. Similarly, if you behave like an animal, it's like you're at an animal's level. An animal's level is down here. If you behave like a human, you're in the human level. If you behave like a god, you're in the god level. If you attain to the jhanas, you're in the Brahma levels. If you attain to the immaterial jhanas, it's like you're right up here. And psychologically, that's also how it feels. It's like being in a different world altogether. So that's a very important thing, because you don't find that teaching quite in any other religion, I think. The correspondence between the psychological and the cosmological in Buddhism is a very striking characteristic that you don't really find in other religions. And because the Buddha was like a master psychologist who had himself attained all these levels, knew all these worlds, he was able to identify them and describe them so that you could understand them, you know. It's not in any way confused. If you look at other religions, when they're talking about the heavens, for instance, sometimes their gods are not behaving like gods. They're behaving like demons. They're vengeful, they're angry, and so on like that. Now, we have angry and vengeful gods, but they don't exist in this area. They exist in this area. They're the Asura. Those are the fallen gods. You see, it's like the Buddha really had seen and understood all the levels of existence and could put them in the right place, you know, and didn't kind of confuse these people up. Sometimes when you see the descriptions of the Abrahamic gods, sometimes they're very beautifully described. And if you look at the descriptions of the gods in the suttas, they're also described in a very similar way. They're at god levels, like this sort of level. And at other times they're described like these vengeful demons. But the vengeful demons, you see, are actually part of the downfall. They're actually part of the Apaya. And they are not to be worshipped, you know? So that's an important thing, you see. The precision with which the various worlds are talked about, explained, is really quite tremendous, you know. And it only comes because, you know, the person who could give these descriptions knows what he's talking about, you know. He's seen these different levels of existence, if you like. Now, an interesting thing is, these are bad destinations, these are good destinations. The Brahmalokas include the Sudavasas, that's the Pure Lands. I'll discuss these areas, we'll take it one by one. Kamaloka, Rupaloka, these Pure Lands, and then the Arupaloka. But just still giving an overview, if you can read on the side here, it says, attained through dana, generosity, and sila, virtue. That means Manusaloka and Devaloka. That means human beings and the sensual God levels. They're attained through generosity and virtue. That means your precepts and, you know, like doing dana and so on. To attain these levels are attained through meditative development. That means bhavana. So you'll often hear that when monks are teaching, they teach about dana, sila, and bhavana. Yeah, dana, sila, bhavana. It comes all the time. Dana and sila will get you back into Manusaloka, that means the world of human beings, or into the lower God levels. That's the sensual God levels. But if you want to get into the high levels, these levels, those are attained through meditative attainment. Apart from the Pure Lands, you need more to attain the Pure Lands, which means you must have wisdom as well. Because it's only anagamis, that's people at the third level of sainthood, if you like. It's only anagamis that get reborn in the Sudavasa, the Pure Lands. And from there, anagami itself, the word means non-returner. They don't return down. From there, they go out of existence. they attain Nibbana. So that's just like an overview, so we'll have a little bit closer look now. This is the Karma Loka, just this bottom part. Okay, so in the Karma Loka there's actually 11 levels to it. 4 levels are the what we call the downfalls, apaya. It means falling away. If your actions are guided by greed, hatred and delusion, these are the levels that you fall into. There's a really scary kind of thing that the Buddha told one time, where he said, more people go down than ever come up. That means when you've fallen down into these levels, it's very, very difficult to get out of them. Because there's no room in these levels to make merit or to do good actions. Why? Because your mind is constantly overcome by bad states of mind. Sometimes when people fall into these worlds, they have a stock of merit. And after they've kind of paid their dues, when they've kind of recompensed for their bad deeds, they can come back up. Most people, of course, have committed both good and bad deeds. That's why you're here and not here, isn't it? And it's interesting that these levels correspond to these 3 bad states. So the Asura Loka, which is the world of the fallen demons, these demons originally, they were in Tavatimsa, at the 7th level. And what happened actually, quite interesting, is they got drunk. Right? The gods also have kind of human characteristics. So these gods got drunk, and then they got into revolt against Sakka. This is Sakka's abode. Sakka is the lord of the gods, yeah. So they got drunk, and they started fighting against Sakka and his retinue. And then Sakka threw them out of Tavatimsa, which is a very nice heaven. We'll come to it in a while. It's a very nice place to be. And they fell down through existence into the world of the fallen demons. That's now called the Asura Loka. Asura itself actually means like the anti-god in a way. They have godlike powers, but they fight against the gods. So that's that level. And their minds are overcome by 2 qualities, which is hatred and jealousy, because they know where they come down from, and then they're jealous of the gods who are still there. So you see, their minds are always encompassed by, if you like, bad qualities. And it's a characteristic of these lower levels that's, you know, what their minds are like. So if your mind is constantly overcome by hatred, how are you going to do anything meritorious and get out of that position? Now, psychologically, it's very interesting also, because many people find themselves in the same position. Their minds are overcome by hatred. They're jealous of being people in a better position. They want to be in a better position, but because their minds are always constantly overcome by hatred, they never get there. It's counterproductive, you know. If you find yourself in a lower realm, psychologically, the worst thing is to hold on to that anger, hold on to any of those bad states of mind, because you'll just stay there. Obviously, if you're continuing with your mind at that level, that's the level you're at. I think everybody heard of the law of attraction. So if you're producing bad qualities of mind, you keep yourself in that position. What is more, like even the people who gather around you are at the same level. If you are always angry, the sort of person that you're with is always angry, and you cannot get out of that level. And many people find that, you know. They fall down from a human level, if you like, and because their minds are overcome by those qualities, they can't get back up. This is the Bhate level, the realm of hungry ghosts. We say hungry ghost, it's influenced actually by the Chinese conception. In fact, it just says Piti Visya in the Pali. The Piti Visya, Piti means fathers. It just means the ancestors. Originally, the ancestor realms. But it got kind of re-envisioned, if you like. Not all people who pass away go to these realms, but somehow it became re-envisioned, and the Bhate Yoni, or the Piti Visya, became the realm for those creatures who had passed away and were reborn with a mind overcome by greed. The hungry ghosts are hungry. Their main quality is, you know, they have a great desire, like they desire to eat, they desire to drink, but they have, you know, when we see them, they have these huge bellies, and they have tiny mouths. They have a huge desire and a very tiny way of fulfilling that desire. Hatred, you see, at the demon level, greed, lobha, at the hungry ghost level, and tirachana yoni, the animal realm. So what is the characteristic of animals? It's really that they're deluded. Their minds are overcome by delusion. They cannot understand or comprehend, even on a level that we can. Their moral quality is very low. It isn't that a dog cannot show affection, and we all like it when they do, but most animals, their main kind of mental quality is that they're overcome by delusion. They cannot understand the world that they're in, and they cannot respond to it in a way that will get them out of there either. Most dogs do not perform dhanas. Most dogs do not keep, you know, their precepts. I mean, anybody can see. They just act according, if you like, to their instincts. They have no way of controlling their instincts. And when we see a human being acting in the same way, they're not able to control their sexual instinct, they're not able to control their aggressive instinct, we say they're like an animal. Because their minds have become animalistic. Their minds have become like an animal. So they, you know, in a way they might as well be animals. And in their next life, they quite possibly will be animals. If you live in an animalistic way all the way through your life, just following your sexual instinct, just following your aggressive instinct and so on like this, where are you going to get reborn? Are you going to get reborn as a god? It isn't going to happen. Because the mind that you've created guides you into the next worlds. If you've been behaving like a god in this life, quite possibly you'll get reborn as a god in the next life. If you've been behaving like one of these lower levels, quite possibly you'll get reborn in these lower levels. But it's very, very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous indeed to fall down into these levels. So, besides anything else, it's a good reason for maintaining just a basic level of precepts. If you've got precepts, we saw you get born in these levels. If you've got precepts, generosity, other good qualities of mind, these are the sort of levels that you get born in. If you've lost your precepts, if your mind's overcome by hatred, greed, delusion, you get born in these lower levels. If your mind is overcome by all of them, greed, hatred and delusion, you get reborn in Nirya. That's the hell realms. Why? Your mind is like hell. If your mind is overcome by greed, hatred and delusion, your mind is like a living hell. And it's a hell for you, it's a hell for everybody else, if you ever see anybody in that state. So they get reborn in the hell worlds. Now, one way of describing the different hell worlds is according to 8 different levels. So they have the Sanjiva level, Kala Sutta level, the Sangata level, the Rova level, Maharova, Tapavan. They all have meanings, right? This means Sanjiva, for instance, means reviving. What happens is, in that level, you get killed, and as soon as you're killed, you get revived. And then you get killed again. Somebody comes along with a sword and kills you, right? And then you revive, and they kill you again. It's a hell. Now then, I got some photographs of hell. You see, holding her while pulling out her lips. These are the tormentors in hell. Sometimes you just get hung up, and then the birds come along and peck at you. Sometimes they spear you through the top of your head. Or they boil up lead and then they pour it through your mouth. Okay, you see here what they're doing. They carry people to the top of the mountain and then throw them off. Right, so all their bones smash when they get to the bottom. If this is Sanjiva, what happens is they get back up and then somebody picks them up, takes them to the top of the mountain and throws them off again. I want you to notice this guy, by the way. Okay. This is Pramalai, sawing people in half. You see, chopping them into little bits, beating with clubs. And they're all kind of naked and defenseless. That's the idea. And picked on by birds, and the birds carry them off, and you see these things. These are discuses that are flying through the air, and they occasionally hit you and chop you in half. These are adulterers. Adulterers like to cling to their lovers, and now they have to cling to a thorn tree. And what is more, they can't get off it. They're constantly on that thorn tree, and it's ripping their flesh apart. So if you see in the birds again, you see these horrible birds. But who's this? Pramalai. See all the skulls at the bottom, and animals. If they try to get down from the tree, then the dogs bite them. Then they have to climb back up the thorn tree, you see. Who's this? Pramalai. And all these people are worshipping him. These are people thrown into hell, and they're worshipping Pramalai. Why? Because he's gone down to the hell realms to teach Dhamma. So when he comes down to teach them Dhamma, then they have a chance of getting out. That's kind of like the idea. Now then, in the Mahayana, you have the earth store bodhisattva. We say in Sanskrit Kshitigarbha. That's a bodhisattva. So you have the idea of Kshitigarbha, who goes to hell, and he brings relief to the hell beings. During Hungry Ghost Month, they have all these pujas for Kshitigarbha. So in the Thai tradition, they have something similar. Probably under the influence of the Chinese, actually, because we don't know about this in Sri Lanka. I never heard of Pramalai. But Pramalai is based on an Arahat who was born in Sri Lanka, I think around the 12th or 13th century. In Sri Lanka we call him Malayadeva. Malayadeva, when I was ordained, we used to know about Malayadeva because it was said that Malayadeva was the last Arahant in Sri Lanka. But somehow his legend travelled to Thailand, and then it was transformed, probably under the influence of Earthstore Bodhisattva, Kshitigarbha. And then they have an idea that Malayadeva, or Pramalai, he descends into hell and he teaches Dhamma for the hell beings. And that way, through listening to Dhamma is a meritorious thing in itself. So that way, they have some sort of chance of, progressing out of that realm, if you like. So he is like a kind of, he's acting like a savior for these beings that have really fallen away. So you remember Pramalai. In Thai tradition, you talk to any Thai monk, they'll tell you the stories of Pramalai. It's very popular, very well known. But in Sri Lanka we don't know it. In Burma we don't know it. In Malaysia, as far as I can see, you don't know it. More tortures for your imagination tonight. This is the arm and this is the leg. When the kings were torturing thieves, this is how they would do it. These are drawn from what people have seen, if you see what I mean. And this is this thing that's eternally cutting his head, and like an eternally bad headache, And then the fire realms. In the Tibetan tradition, they have an interesting thing, because I think, if this is right, there's 8 hell realms. 4 of them are hot realms, and 4 of them are cold realms. So in 4 of them you're getting burned. Like Tapana, one of the hells is called Tapana. Tapana means heat. It's the hot realm. This I thought was interesting, you see. It's an interesting depiction of people in hell. One of the things that they say about hell is that it's claustrophobic, like being completely enclosed. And you're afraid, you want to break out, but you can't break out. Everything is kind of so close around you. And you want to get out from that, but you can't get out. There's nowhere to go. Now then, up until, I think, around 1900, up until that time, there was only something like 1 billion people on Earth. 2 billion didn't come till about 1930. 3 billion is something like 1950. It goes on like that. I can't remember the exact dates because I didn't make notes or anything. We hit 6 billion around 2000. In 12 years, there's 1 billion more people on Earth. And it's projected, the projections are that by 2050, there'll be 9.5 billion people. Every second, 1.8 people die. Every minute, 105 people die. Every hour, 6,000 people. But every year, 55 million people die in the world. That's more than twice the population of Malaysia. It has this nice quote, actually. The accumulation of one person's bones during one aeon, and we've been in samsara for many, many aeons, would be a mass as big as a mountain, so said the Buddha. If you've just piled up the bones that you yourself have had, it's like a mountain of bones. But what it doesn't show on here, but what is important is, every second there are 1.8 deaths in the world. Every second there are 2.5 births in the world. There are more people being born than there are dying. So even though people are dying at a phenomenal rate, 55 million a year, there's about 75 million being born. So the population is increasing. 7 billion people in the world. It sounds like a lot, isn't it? But it's absolutely tiny when you compare it to the animal realm. You know, 7 billion, you know, you compare it to ants. There are more ants in the world than ever you could imagine. Let alone count. You couldn't count them, you know. Billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. Same with things like beetles and things like that. You know, insects are very, very successful as far as reproduction is concerned. Now, quite likely, at least a good percentage have fallen out of Manosa Loka. And now, you know, they're crawling around in ant colonies, of which there are billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of them. So, you know, it ties in with what the Buddha was saying, more go down than ever come up. Another thing, that's just animals. There are also Asuras, there are also Petas, there are also hells chock-a-block full. And also, there are heavenly realms. So the heavenly realms are also full of devas. It's said, for instance, again, I can't remember the exact number, but it's said when the Buddha taught the first sermon, he taught it to 5 of his companions. But there were millions of devas came to listen, because there's plenty of devas out there who want to listen to the Dhamma. And Brahmas as well. Same on the Parinibbana deathbed, then the amount of monks and nuns and lay people who gathered round the Buddha could probably be counted in hundreds. They called out the Mala village to come and pay their respects to the Buddha as he was dying. So maybe we could say hundreds of people. But again, there were millions of devas came to see the last moments of the Buddha on earth. There are millions and millions and millions and millions of devas as well. Important, you